everybody, my name is Taylor Gonzaga. I am the artistic director and founder of Opera Sicelia, which is a wonderful little nomadic opera company that I've started that's both online and in person, producing performances and awesome content through our YouTube channel for all of you between performances of our season. If you are new here, welcome, welcome. This is going to be a super fun video that I'm really looking forward to. You have arrived at this channel because you also are a fan of Aurora as much as I am, if not more. I don't think it's any secret at this point on this channel that I'm a huge fan of the artist Aurora. She is a beautiful artist from Norway, and we have gone through two of her amazing pieces so far, Murder Song 54321 and Cure for Me on this channel. So if you haven't seen those two videos, now we're going to do part 3 in the official series of videos that are all about Aurora. And this one is extra special because we'll actually be breaking down one of her official music videos. And this will be for her newest song, Giving Into the Love, which honestly, in all honesty, I have not come across a song of Aurora's that I dislike. Of course, I have some that I like more than others. This one is one of my favorites so far that she has released that will be on her new upcoming album, just because I think it gives off this wonderful, empowering spirit of self-acceptance, similar to a lot of the themes in Cure for Me, but different all at the same time. Thank you so much for all the support that you've given to this channel so far. And please, if you're interested in seeing more of this content and supporting this channel and my overall opera company and just musical endeavors in general, please don't hesitate to like and subscribe and click the notification bell so that you know exactly when our next video is going to be posted. We try to post videos at least twice a week, usually on Tuesdays and Thursdays. If you are an Aurora fan, you know that Aurora kind of leaves her music ambiguous to a certain extent so that we can all have our own interpretation and take our own meaning from it. In the spirit of a true Aurora fan, I will be watching the video and I will be reacting and giving my own take and breakdown on some of the symbolism and how I first ingested the song and the video when I watched it. And this will be from both a music educator's perspective, so we'll be talking a little bit about her vocal technique, but this video is also largely going to be about symbolism in the actual music video and all the nerdy, cool, wonderful research that I have done and all of the interpretations and thoughts that came into my head. In regard to some of the interpretations of this piece, as you know, Aurora is very connected to the natural environment. Aurora is also very connected to just experiencing human nature in all of its different forms and all of its different sides. So definitely this is not unusual territory for her to jump into in terms of song themes. But basically what she has sort of said, or what she's been quoted as saying in the context of this article, is that the spiritual door between the human and the gods is a very complicated thing. The gods we can touch is kind of her overall album, is what she's speaking in reference to right now. In the right hands, faith can become the most beautiful thing, nurturing and warm. And in the wrong hands, it can become a beacon of war and death. And so she's kind of talking about how a lot of the songs on this album, and you particularly see this in Giving Into the Love, are all about sort of our relationship with the divine. And however you might interpret that depends on your background and what your religious views or lack thereof or anything under the sun. So I really think that she's being inclusive and isn't zeroing in maybe on one specific faith background here, but you can approach it from many different perspectives. And it's basically human beings' relationship, our ethereal, our spiritual relationship to the earth that we live on, the rest of the species that we cohabitate on this earth with, and our relationship with the divine or the spiritual, if that is what you believe in. Faith can be something that is very beautiful in any context. And it can also, as we've seen throughout our history, be very easily weaponized. You can also kind of see it in Exist for Love and Cure for Me and some of the other singles that she's released that will be on this album, that kind of like ethereal thread of investigating human beings' relationship with the divine or the concept of faith as a whole. She is quoted saying, "One thing that has always bothered me is the idea that we're born unworthy, having to deem ourselves worthy by suppressing the forces within us that make us human. Not perfect, not flawless, just human. Could we find this divine power in ourselves while still being attached and seduced to the wonders of the world, the flesh, the fruit, and the wine?" A lot of Western society is dominated by a primarily Judeo-Christian perspective, and I come from a Christian background myself, but I'm also critical in the sense that I feel like there's a lot of threads in that religious background that kind of talk about us constantly being unworthy or terrible or sinners. And I happen to have reinvented it in my own eyes through a humbling perspective for sure, but also through this perspective of being an empowered person within the faith. And if you are going to choose to have a faith in a divinity, in the Judeo-Christian perspective, we're made in God's image. Doesn't that mean that we are inherently beautiful if we believe that God is beautiful? I truly do believe that we are worthy. And do we fall short and are we imperfect? Yes, but maybe some of the things that we have considered super sinful, like showing extreme emotions or expressing different sexualities or whatever it may be, all of these things that we've deemed as like bad or shamed ourselves for, maybe that doesn't have to be the case. Maybe those are just aspects of our humanity that were created in God's image too. She's playing around with this, our relationship that we also have with shame. And I'm trying to address this to anybody's religious views that may be watching this video as respectfully as possible, because I know that everyone comes from different backgrounds and we all deserve to be a part of the conversation. But I just do think that the point that she's making is very beautiful here, that like we don't have to be afraid of ultimately of the things that make us human, because those things are beautiful. And yeah, we're gonna mess up, but that doesn't make us terrible or unworthy or horrible creatures. We were born to be on this planet. She talks about how faith can easily be weaponized to go too far. She's just talking about kind of living in harmony with our own humanity at the end of the day. I think that is what intrigues me about the Greek gods, the gods of the ancient world, perfectly imperfect, almost within our reach, like gods we can touch, which reflects the overall theme of the album. I love the fact that she is taking inspiration from Greek mythology. I happen to be super fascinated with Greek mythology myself, a fascinating interplay between humans and gods within that faith. And I love the fact you can definitely tell that there is a lot of like Greek god or goddess inspiration in this very, very ethereal music video of hers. And then there's this other article that is kind of talking about, this is kind of like in reference to this specific album. She says it's quite sensual actually, and very much about the dark, the light, and the absurd combination of the two. So she likes to talk about both sides of the spectrum of humanity, like I said earlier in this video. She says, to me, music has always been very serious and no fun. I always write about really serious things, and I can see myself standing on stage every night for an hour and being really sad all the time. Not that she doesn't take joy in what she does, but I think it's interesting that she's not afraid to be honest about the fact that like taking on the emotional burden of like all of these really, really incredibly deep and nuanced topics of her songwriting can be very challenging at times. This other very, very interesting quote is from a different article where they actually compared her music to Kate Bush. She does have kind of an airy, free-spirited vocal tone. This article writer quotes Aurora as saying that she was thinking about Prometheus and how he stole the fire to sculpt us, the humans. We're made of kind of like this inner fire. There's this need in us to be kind of connected to some sort of spiritual realm sometimes, or to at least be deeply connected to our earth and to our planet, or to each other, that need for human connection. I feel like sometimes we forget that we are living creatures capable of so many beautiful things, and the human's current obsession with beauty makes us forget and devalue the fire that rests within us, our inner self and most important part. I feel like I'm in a therapy session whenever I listen to Aurora being quoted in an article, because it's just like, it's such healing words. She's filled with so much wisdom for somebody that is just genuinely so young still. We are very capable of really, really beautiful things. We have a high capacity to love as a human species, and sometimes, especially with recent turmoil going on in the world, it can be hard to remember that at moments. And she also is kind of talking about beauty obsession in the sense of like beauty standards and how harmful those can be. And so we devalue our inner fire, or we devalue that confidence that we have raging within us to do these beautiful things in the world. We shame ourselves and we hold ourselves back because we feel like we don't fit the mold of what somebody who has that much drive or ambition or just that much of a capacity to love would look like. And that's really sad that we're so focused on the outer shell of us that we forget what's going on in our own souls. I think she's speaking a little bit more openly about some of the meanings and inspirations behind this album than some of the other pieces that she's released in the past or bodies of work. So it's kind of cool to see her coming into her own in that sense and being more open with us, the audience, about those things, but also still leaving it ambiguous enough that we can glean our own meanings from it too. This is just a very beautiful multi-nuanced song. I'm sure I didn't get all of the information that is available out there, but I tried to at least get a good amount. This is Giving Into the Love by Aurora.
I'm losing my connection. I'm tired of the rules and your corrections. I want to live my life, be all of its pages, and underline that I am not an angel.
All right, so I just wanted to stop there from at the very, very beginning so that we're breaking down the symbolism as we go. So this very, very first scene, we see Aurora. If we go back, we see Aurora kind of sitting underneath, sitting amidst this garden, this very, very beautiful garden. And I think in one of her Instagram posts, she actually kind of referred to the music video's aesthetic as a Garden of Eden. So that's also a Judeo-Christian reference. So there's a lot of different mythologies and religious backgrounds and faith backgrounds, and like there's a lot of different symbolism from humans' relationship with the divine throughout history in this music video, which is really, really cool. I'm so sorry if I'm using the wrong name for the structure, but it's this really big, beautiful, like gazebo-like structure with a statue in the middle, and it's all kind of like very, very Greek. She has a costume on that is like using like a very, very soft color palette, but it also has kind of like sort of like angel wings, or it definitely reflects sort of like a Cupid type of vibe almost. I hope I'm not completely off in my mythology on that. It's been a while since I've read most of the Greek myths, even though I'm very intrigued by them. It's really interesting that she says, I'd like to underline the fact that I am no angel, but she is wearing a little bit of like winged armor on her shoulders. And that's a very Greek design, but at the same time, it also sort of reflects this idea of her, like Cupid being so associated with love and making people fall in love. She's just talking about like this idea of like a human paradise. She's weary, I think, at the way that the world is perceiving her and all of the pressure that she may have felt from that in the past, but there's also this sense of like shedding that. And that just made me, I'm going through kind of a personal renaissance in my own life right now, so that may be just me projecting my own meanings.
All of its pages and underline that I am not an angel. 'Cause if I'm not pure, I guess that I'm too much. I'll never know to keep it touch.
Kind of pans to these scenes where she's actually more amidst the greenery and among the greenery, and you can see that there is kind of like a winged reference. It's either like Cupid or like almost like Pegasus type wings on her shoulders. It's a very, very beautiful costume. Gorgeous aesthetics so far in this video. I love the fact that she says, because if I'm not pure, I guess I'm too much. I don't know how to keep in touch. I think she's actually sort of addressing to a certain extent some of the things that people have said about her. Some people think that she's almost like this divine nymph-like character, or like fae or fairy-like character. I've seen her compared to mythological creatures quite a bit, but she also like is embracing her own humanity, and then some people think she's over the top. I've also heard that. So I think part of it is like her being self-aware of how the world perceives her, but then her just saying, I don't know how to keep in touch with that. Like, that's not what my priorities are. And I want to be among nature, and I want to be free. And I feel free when I am in my own personal Garden of Eden, and I'm allowing myself to be the instrument of love that I know I have the potential to be. It's just this, it's kind of an anthem of personal freedom. Understanding the world's perceptions of you. I am of this earth and I belong here, even if it feels really hard to belong in humanity sometimes.
Be somebody, I'll never let my skin deciding for me. I never had the world, so I changed for it. I never had the world, so I changed for it. Getting into the love, getting into the love, getting into the love, the love.
So we just heard the chorus, and I think one of the most important parts was her saying, I never had the world, so why change for it? You know, I feel like we try to change to be of the world so much, and we try to change so that the world constantly has, we're constantly getting the world's approval, the rest of society's approval for things. And she's talking about how she's actually just glorifying all of her differences and reveling in the fact that she's this unique being and nobody can be exactly like her. And I love the fact that she's kind of the only living entity that's dancing among these statues, being this kind of like force for love and light and freedom among all of these people that look exactly the same and are literally frozen in time in their sameness. And she is the only one that's different and that's alive and vibrant and running around and basically doing whatever her impulses tell her to do. She's tapping into that like inner fire in our humanity, that Prometheus fire that brought us to life in the first place. At the core of it, she's just talking about rejoicing in being different and celebrating people for their differences, and celebrating her own differences from the rest of humanity too.
To find somebody who is not dying, but everybody cries and nobody comforts. The television lies and now my mind hurts. And if I'm not lying, I guess that I am cursed.
Okay, so I love the fact that she's like, the television lies and now my mind hurts. And so she's starting to get into addressing beauty standards here in a very simple, but also highly, highly poetic and well-nuanced way. And that's the first introduction that we get to actually the actions that are being taken by these statues. And I would love for us to kind of actually go back in the video a little bit and take a look at some of the expressions that these statues have and some of the body language that they're conveying, or that they're frozen and they're stuck in. And I think that's sort of a metaphor for the fact that we're stuck in society and all of these patterns that don't need to exist, especially when it comes to beauty standards and shaming people for their sexual preferences or for their race or ethnicity or for all of these things that actually make us so beautiful and diverse and incredible as a species. And we're shaming all of that when we could embrace it. And I think that's kind of the root of what she's talking about here. You see like 3 different men in the statue, and one of them is kind of getting in the way or shoving 2 other men apart that kind of look like they're trying to have an intimate moment. I know that she also talked a lot about gay rights and very, very important social issues in Cure for Me as well, and that's kind of what the premise of the video was about. But I also think that that might be symbolism for that, like we're interrupting these 2 men's beautiful intimate moment and shaming it and telling them that it can't exist. When why does it have to be that hard for people to be able to love each other how they feel they can love each other, you know? So the other one is of 2 women, and I'm hoping I'm not interpreting this incorrectly. If anyone has a different interpretation of what those 2 statues mean, then please let me know in the comments below, because I'd love to hear. One of the women was looked like it was holding something out of reach of the other woman, and part of me is wondering if that has to do with the fact that women are like are kind of like pitted against each other or made to be each other's competitors in society. And so one woman feels like they have to hold something over the other woman. And then I also think that it could also be a sign for the class system. And like, why are we taking away the rights of others so that other people can have a surplus? And like, there's a lot of things that you can unpack from that, but there's a lot of symbolism within the body language of these statues. Man, this music video has so much to it if you look beyond just the absolutely gorgeous aesthetics.
My mind hurts. And if I'm not lying, I guess that I am cursed. I gotta know to beat it first. If I'll be somebody, I'll never let my skin decide it for me. I never had the world, so I change for it. I never had the world, so I change for it. Getting into the love, getting into the love, getting into the love, the love, the love, the love, the love. Getting into the love, getting into the love, getting into the love, the love, the love, the love.
Okay, So we're gonna stop real quick because that was a very important moment in the music video. So we see her dancing around, we see her super free again. And then all of a sudden she touches one of the statues, and all of these statues are in sort of like abrasive or like positions where they're trying to separate themselves from other people, positions of otherness, or giving off body language of I don't want you to touch me, or I'm closed off to that idea. And they're stuck in this. But then she breaks the cycle and she goes up and she touches this man, she caresses his face, and then he comes alive, and then that starts kind of a chain reaction where he's reaching over to gently touch the other woman. And I think this is what made me kind of emotional when I saw this video for the first time, is the fact that like all of us right now, especially those who had to like quarantine for long periods of time, or all of the other like things that have happened as a result of, you know, what we're currently dealing with. So many people feel increasingly isolated. So many people are feeling touch deprived, and human touch and connection on that deep and intimate level is so important for us. It's so important for our vitality. It's so important for us to experience in our lives. And there's been a lot of studies about harmful psychological and even physical effects that touch deprivation can have on a person. That lack of intimacy, or that inability to actually physically be in the presence of another human being. And that's something that I think we all collectively went through in the world as a trauma. And so it's so beautiful to kind of address that in a piece, and it's cathartic to see that. And so I think that there's a part of her like saying, this is how important human touch and human connection and intimacy, true, beautiful, lovely, respectful, consensual intimacy, either romantically or platonically, it doesn't matter, but just with other human beings. If we were to like reach out and connect to each other and try to live in each other's shoes for a second, or at least see other people's perspectives, then humanity would be so much more beautiful for it. And we would stop isolating ourselves from the rest of us through division or through technology or whatever it may be. And we'll start coming together as a collective species again, uniting. And she's kind of serving as like a Cupid-like instrument of love. This is a different interpretation of like a Cupid character. A Cupid has always often been associated, especially in popular culture, with romantic love. But this is just a Cupid of general love, romantic or platonic, whatever kind of love it may be, but just love for humanity and your fellow species on this planet, love for the earth, love for divinity and connected to spirituality, if that's something you choose to be connected to in your life, in an extremely respectful and loving way that gives life to the world instead of takes life away from other people, and instead of weaponizing it, using it as a conduit for that love. Getting back into all of the great aspects of humanity by owning the dark parts and realizing that we're not defined by them. Okay, so it has a beautifully playful ending where she kind of runs off into the sunset with all these statues that are now very alive and very human and are connecting to each other and seem so much happier. And that just goes to show that like anybody in their lives can set off this chain reaction, and you don't have to be this like giant entity or super popular entity in society. You don't have to be famous in order to do that. You just have to kind of embody that loving spirit in your everyday life however you can. But another more subtle thing that may be a little bit harder to notice in the video is if you go back and you watch that last part of the music video, you'll notice that there's like this fiery version of Aurora that's sort of silhouetting her and following her around as she's dancing through these statues and through this beautiful kind of Garden of Eden imagery that we're getting in the video. And that goes back to the Prometheus fire and that inner fire. And she reflects that so sincerely in her own life. She's such a conduit for bringing out that light in others that you can literally see the fire around her. and she's trying to get everybody else to tap into like that inner fire that makes us so motivated to make our world and our life as beautiful as possible and get past all of these huge challenges that we're dealing with in our society so that we can just give into the love. I think a lot of people have been very hardened toward love and intimacy in their lives and softness. She's also spoken a lot about how, you know, the patriarchy in Western society, it hurts men too. Of course it hurts women. I myself am an example of that in experiences I've been through in my own life dealing with misogyny, but it also hurts men because men are made to feel like they can't feel their feelings. And, you know, and women's feelings are censored to a certain extent too. Anybody on the binary spectrum, you know, we all kind of feel like we have to overly censor our emotions, and Aurora is telling us that we don't have to, guys. So like, maybe we don't. I don't know, like Aurora there's a lot of truth and wisdom and beautiful things that are happening in this video. That's all I'll say. Opera Sicilia's most recent production of Orfeo ed Eurydice is actually based off of a Greek myth. And we have a very similar aesthetic to this video, to our show, and we take a lot of inspiration from Aurora and her artistry and other contemporary artists as well when creating an operatic production, because we believe that operatic artists and contemporary artists should intermingle and collaborate and have relationships with each other, and that we can draw a lot of inspiration from other musical genres. So if you're interested in checking that out, all you have to do is go to the website that is linked below, and that will direct you to our page where you can pay via PayPal. It's just a $5 ticket, and then I send you a link and you get access to the show forever through that link. So if you're interested in that, please feel free to kind of hit us up and get your ticket to Orfeo ed Eurydice to see another Greek myth played out in music. Continue to give into the love in your own lives. I know that Aurora has inspired me to do the same, and I'll see you all again around here soon. Bye!